Okay, thank you, Martin. So we'll go through this. So we said online assessment and scheduled documents. So the requirement for that is under Article 9, B1 and 2. So highlighted there, a schedule of plans, calculations, specifications, and particulars that are currently designed or to be prepared at a later date. And then the second one is the completion of the online assessment via the building control management system, a proposed approach for compliance with requirements, the second schedule of the building regulations. So I'm going to look at that one first and look at this one second, because that's the way they ordered on the BCMS system. So that's the outline presentation. We're going to look at the online assessment, the purpose of it. We're going to look at the online assessment, how you do it, and then we'll look at the schedule of documents under question 6 of the commencement notice. So what's the purpose of it? Well, for designers, it's a good tool for identifying risks when you're looking at your building. So when correctly completed, the online assessments will identify the risks of non-compliance with the building regulations that are present in the building and be utilised as part of your risk assessment in relation to the building regulations. And it's been designed in association with the building control authorities and to ensure that building works must be considered in relation to the building regulations and the proposed buildings and the required information submitted to the building control. So, for instance, under Part C, we have a question: is the site located in an area of high radon? So, the question to the designer is: have you checked the latest radon map? It was reissued there during the last week. There has been an update to Part C. So, is the proposed building location a high radon area? Have you checked the rising wall and DPC level details to include for the radon barrier? Has the radon barrier been specified in accordance with Part C and Part D? Does it have an ongoing cert? So the person filling out the online assessment should be competent to do it. They should understand what the requirements of the second schedule of the building regulations are and the complexities of the building and the works and the site that is to be completed on. So that's a brief outline of the 12 parts of the building regulations. So we have A to M, structure, sound, etc. And then you see common defects. So lots of common defects, for instance, in balconies, for instance, under Part A, issues with wall ties, sound insulation under Part A and E. Part J, we have issues with pipes, flue pipes, separation with plus materials and that kind of thing. So when we're looking at the regulations on the online assessment, those should be, you should be looking at it as a designer, you should be looking at it going, am I actually complying? Have I looked at those particular risks? So on the building control side, the online assessment starts looking at these particular things in details. So the ones in red are dealt with in the online assessment: the type of building, the use of building, the location of the development, the form of construction. Is it a particular type of new construction? Is it insulated formwork? Is it modular? You know, those types of things will maybe increase the issue of risk for the building control authority, and they may look at that and say, well, I need to look at that on my inspection program going forward. And that all details is contained in your commencement notice when you're doing your online assessment, so the building control authority can review it and use it as well. So how complicated is the construction? You know, is it relatively straightforward? And how serious are the consequences of the failure of a particular, or the contravention of a particular part M to A? So obviously A being structure, if it's a high-rise building, there's a very high risk of a consequence of a failure of that. So it may be something that might be looked at on the risk assessment side for the building control authority. So that's all set out in the framework for building control authorities. The links on there at the bottom. So the other thing we can use the online assessment for as well is that there was a project done with Colin Barton, sorry, that's Waterford and City and County Council, not County Council, to develop a risk index. So that was taking data that is put into the online assessment, and that is through an algorithm is actually sort of assesses the risk index. So obviously it goes from 0 to 100, so the zeros are the 0 to 20s are the blues, and the greens which are 30 to 20 to 40 and so on. So nothing is above 80 in this particular thing, but you can see The ones that have risks, or in this particular way the argument works, would be Dublin City Council. Obviously, they've got a lot of high-rise buildings there. South Dublin, again, a lot of high-rise accommodation dwellings, and Limerick City, etc. So when you come to the more rural counties, you see that the risk is less because the way the argument works is based on the height of the building, the size of the building, the use of the building. But that's something that we're developing with the Power BI to allow us to sort of roll that out for county councils to use as part of their risk analysis assessment. So we go to, so I've been looking at this from the user's point of view, from the BCMS for how you create a notice. So you go to a new notice, and then it brings up the 4 different types of notice we've talked about already. And we talked about what ones apply to different situations, and then there is actually quite a good tool in the Bringing Back Homes, which is the flow diagram to establish whether a commencement notice is required or not. And as John alluded to there, there's different classes of buildings that are excluded from the building regulations. They're shown in that box on the first part, and you would flow through that to see, look at your building and see what kind of commencement notice you require. It also has a small part about whether fire cert is required or not, up in the top right-hand corner. So it's a good document to use, and professionals and building control authorities should look at that, and so they can assess what kind of commencement notice has been used and are they using the right type. So when you get onto that, there's 4 notices, and all of them show that you have to submit the details of the building project for each building type and a schedule of documents in the format as shown as question 6 of the commencement notice. So we go into the online assessment. So that is under Article 9B13. Complete the online assessment via the building control management system for the purpose of the approach to compliance with the requirements of the second schedule building regulations. So you click on online assessment, you click on add a building, and it brings you to building particulars. So you look at building particulars. So note, you might have several buildings, so you might add on several buildings. You should make sure that they are all sensibly named so that the building control authority can understand what building they're looking at in the drawings. And then when you come to CCC site, that you understand which ones you're actually looking to issue certs on. This is an example of one that's actually on the system where the person who filled it out just called them all semi-detached dwellings. So if you're looking at the drawings, you have no idea which semi-detached dwelling you're looking at. I don't know how they identify those on the site plan, but it just causes a confusion. All I need to put in was type A, type B, type C, and I would have avoided any issue with the submission or trying to construe which dwelling was actually being looked at. So this is just a note about that. So we go to the next part. So on the BCMS, there's a little green button called widgets, the information button called the widget, and it will inform you, the user, regarding the requirements of each query, and it will link to an external site or an extract of the relevant TGD to assist in the required selection. So just to note that also it has the purpose of the building, so the BCMS allows for multiple uses, obviously one building, so a building can be a residential dwelling, an office, and a shop. All that information is kept on the in the actual database, so that when we come later on, you can actually interrogate the database to look at particular types of dwellings or types of buildings and subgroups. So on the left-hand side there, we have types of construction. So the type of construction of the building or works. System allows for multiple types of construction within one building. We're at the moment reviewing the types of construction to match new construction types that become common in the building industry. For instance, insulated formwork, for instance, is not a note at the moment, but we can add that in consultation with the building control authorities. And then the other thing is maybe a risk. Load-bearing structures that arrive on site prefabricated, 3D modulars, for instance, can present a risk in relation to demonstrating compliance with the second schedule. For instance, if they're built in a third country, for instance, and they're brought in as a system, how do you interrogate that? How do you, if you want to do an inspection on that, the building control authority, it's particularly difficult because everything's already enclosed, covered in. There's no inspection of it. So that'll be a risk that building control authorities may look at. So this is the online assessment part A to C. So we'll look at that. So again, if you click on that widget, it'll say the consequential class. It will pop up an image of the consequential class, and you can select the appropriate one from the drop-down menu. You know, is there engineered foundation? Is the building on the disturbed, built-up, soft, contaminated ground, or is there a high water table? These types appropriate. So, for instance, if it is selected as yes, you would expect to see a raft foundation drawing in the package of information that you've received, because the raft foundation is the first thing that's going to be put in. So you would look at that and say, am I getting the information to see that they've actually addressed this in relation to compliance with the building regulations? Again, balconies, it's not a widget, this is a comment. They do present unique design challenges. There's structures that every building structure is normal, whereas Mary talked about earlier, 60 years, it could be 100. Balconies have a sort of a unique thing because they're outside, they're weathered, they have issues with the joining of the building. So those things may be a risk that the Building Control Authority may look to interrogate either at commencement stage or maybe at a sectional level if they haven't got sufficient information. But also the balcony designers must be careful in consideration of design in relation to the building control regulations. And then we have a question. Is the site located in an area of high radon? So that would link you to the map. Again, if you click on that link there, the GIS, you can actually type in your air code and it will tell you if you are or not. So in relation to that, so we talked about the data that's collected. So for instance, I just did this was for someone, the EPA asked me a question about, could I tell them where radon barriers have been installed? And I said, well, I can't actually, because the system doesn't record that, but it does record how people have clicked yes or no, if it's a radon area. So Dublin, in general, is a low radon area. So you can see on the left-hand side, people have clicked no correctly. But a substantial minority of people have actually clicked yes. So they either didn't understand the question or just had this idea that the answer they want to see is yes. So we'll click yes because that's what they're probably expecting from that particular question. So again, you have to say that there's a competency of the person who's filling out the online assessment. Do they understand the question, or are they just regurgitating others from a previous online assessment they've done? So we go into parts D to G. Sound. So sound only applies to adjoined dwellings, dwellings adjoined to non-dwellings, or dwellings with mixed uses. So no is the reasonable answer. So you might get things people say, oh yeah, I've done eve sound. It doesn't actually apply in the case of schools. Again, hygiene. This again, it just shows you how you how the water is provided to the site. Existing connection, then tells you please select one of those. So all this is collected in the system and can be brought out. And I'll show you how that's done later on. So similar questions for surface water. And then L. So L, a preliminary BA report illustrating compliance with Part L should be available for all commencement notices, including opt-outs declarations, in order to outline how the building has been designed to comply with the Part L. So I do get a lot of questions in from the people going, I put a submission note, and the first thing they did was they asked me for a Part L BER report. Why isn't it on the list? It's on it. It should be on the list. We have to look at that, but it's important that this is put in to illustrate that the designer or the owner, who may be the same person, has considered Part L, because they'll be running that building for 50 to 100 years. So that is going to be something that's going to hit their pocket and also hit the environment. So DAC, well, it's not provided, but it commencement notice. The building, the drawings should illustrate the access from the boundary, the provision of level thresholds, the minimum widths of corridors and doors, and the provision of accessible WC to illustrate how they are complying with the building regulations Part L. So that was the public interface. This is a brief one just showing that this is what the Building Control Authority see. They see the same information, and the different questions are filled out as they are in the front end. And this is the one. This is how the interface that the Building Control Authorities would use to look at each commencement notice and to validate, but to ensure that the online assessment is filled out correctly. So the BCMS, the BCMS data is actually up on the portal, and it's available for everybody. The link is there, and that will provide an Excel document which illustrates nearly all of the fields that are submitted on the online assessment. Obviously, there's some things that have to be taken off because of GDPR issues, but it goes through the proposed use of the building, subgroup, etc. All those things. It's only a short extract of it. And that is used by the Central Certificate Office, Building Info, or a company who do research on statistics for buildings, A&G Goodbody, the Evaluation Office, the Department of Housing use it for their statistical analysis, the Department of Taoiseach have looked at it, and also large developers and builders will look at it just to see what the market's doing in general. So you can filter it by year, by date, by consequent class, everything. So question 6 of the commencement notice. So question 6, submission of documents where applicable. A schedule of documents accompanying the commencement notice is attached in the following format: schedules of plans, calculations, specifications, and civil services and particulars. So when you submit those drawings, you should be able to, and should be noted that these are as designed or to be designed later. So as Sean, Don alluded to earlier on, you may have like a large development where the foundations have been designed, but there might be some still outstanding design for curtain walling or a roof or roof trusses or whatever, which has not yet been designed, but they should be identified to know that you can look at that and you can ask the designers, have you uploaded those information so we can look at as part of our ongoing inspection, so that we know that what's being drawn and installed is in compliance with the building regulations. So in the code of practice, it tells you other documentation is the key document. It's appropriate to be submitted depending on the particular building works. So you have structural calculations, site investigations do not have to be submitted at the commencement stage, but you could still ask for them. However, they should be kept and made available to Building Control Authority. So the Building Control Authority look at that site and think, I have knowledge of that site, or that there's been issues around that area about issues with subsidence or whatever. They might come back to you and say, can you see that report? Can we look at that site investigation? And that information should be provided within 2 weeks of the request. Then we have 5E3, which goes into the submission of plans and later dates. So under the code of practice, it says, similarly, drawings and documentations where significant changes or omissions have occurred should be certified and submitted before the relevant work commences. So what's that saying? If you're on site and you've put in drawings and scheduled documents that illustrate that the buildings are going to be metal framed or light gauge steel, and you decide to change to masonry, as soon as you've got that decision, you should be engaging with the Building Control Authority to say, there's a change, I'm going to submit it so you can have a look at those drawings before the work commences. But in the actual building regulations itself, it also says there's another method of sort of squaring that circle, so to speak, that under B1 and 2, that if the plans and calculations, specifications in particular submitted as proposed Article 9, 1B, or Article 20A, so that's the first one is the commencement notice with documentation, second one is the 7A notice, as well as listed. So if you've changed things in the course of construction, they have to be uploaded at the CCC stage. And you have to illustrate that they comply with the requirements of the second schedule of the building regulations. So how do you upload on BCMS? So they're under supporting documents. There's a tab, you click on schedule documents. They should be in the format as shown in the commencement notice in the Act. So schedule questions should be uploaded. to be in the format as shown in question 6. It should list all plans, calculations, specifications, and ancillary results applicable for light demonstrating compliance with parts A to M of the building regulations, and it should list the plans, calculations, ancillary results not yet designed that will demonstrate compliance with part M. So you have ones that you're submitting that you're saying these do comply, and ones in the future, I'm going to design these, and when I design them, they will comply, and the Building Control Authority can ask for those. This is a couple of examples of schedules of documents that have been uploaded, which obviously do not comply. So first one is this form of commencement, notice of assignment to builder, declaration of intent, and plans, elevation drawings. It doesn't tell you anything about what they are or what they show. Similarly, this one is just a list, and then it gets to the architecture drawings, and they're just numbers. It doesn't tell you what they illustrate. It doesn't say front elevation. It just says, I had to blank them out because they may have, they had like the commencement notice reference number on it. So that's sort of incomplete, but you know, this is a more complete one. They've broken it down in sections. They show you all the different people who are involved, the architect drawings, mechanical, civil engineering, the Part L report, the preliminary inspection plan, the statutory documents. They illustrate they've all been uploaded. So you have to look at that and say, oh, well, they've illustrated that. I'll open up the drawings, have a look at them as well. But you know, they you'd be fairly confident they should be in compliance with question 6. So this is one like I just put up. So for instance, you got this as a Building Control Authority. You ask questions. Well, there's 3 things there which should be designed, and they're telling me they haven't designed them yet. So, you know, as John alluded to, they might be starting in 14 to 28 days. So if they haven't got their rising walls and their raft foundation and the septic tank all kind of shown, how do we know how they're illustrating compliance with Part A, C, D, and H? So sorry, and just say, you know, and that could be a possible request for revised information. You could say the schedule doesn't actually illustrate what drawings drawings are needed at this stage to illustrate compliance. And if it was for a house, you'd expect to have all those drawings uploaded at the start because a house is not a complicated building. If it's a larger building, as alluded earlier on, you would look to say, oh, well, it's reasonable to believe that they would go and do the curtain warning design later. So in summary, the completion of the online assessment and question 6 are essential for demonstrating the proposed approach to compliance with building, or the compliance with requirements of the second schedule, building regulations for the health, safety, securing the health and health, safety, welfare of persons in or about buildings and persons who may be affected by buildings or other matters. Thank you for your attention.